Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. I hit the bathroom door with my shoulder. I'm Alex, 28, already regretting this sprint. Water ran beyond the wood, then stopped. A whisper leaked through the seam. My pulse picked a fight with my throat. The handle twitched under my palm. "Mara," I kept my voice low and hard. Silence answered, then a muffled clatter. I slid the latch and pushed slow. If she begged, I needed to hear why. The door opened an inch, then two. Steam curled out, thin and nervous. Mara stood barefoot, robe crooked, eyes wet. She blocked the gap with her knee. "Don't," she breathed, and I heard the lie. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. Andre's name flashed. I killed the call. If he heard this first, the wedding died. Mara's gaze dropped to my thumb. Her mouth trembled and the door widened. He appeared behind her like a shadow. Uncle Dora's shirt misbuttoned, jaw set. His stare dared me to make noise. I stepped in, anchoring my feet. Mara flinched as our shoulders brushed. "Move," he said, voice low and steady. I didn't, and pointed to the robe tie. Mara tightened it with shaking fingers. Dora's hand flexed, then fell flat. The air felt wired and ready to snap. Car tires bit gravel outside, fast, close. "Andre, no time, no mask, no plan." Mara grabbed my wrist like a drowning grip. "Please," she whispered, eyes on the door. I had 2 seconds before everything burned. A screen lit on the sink, bright flash. One preview line, enough to scorch. "Tonight again before rehearsal, no names." Mara lunged for it, breath ragged. I caught her elbow and she sagged. Dora reached past me for the phone. I pinned his wrist to the jam. He hissed, teeth bare, sweat beading. "Not now," I said, and pressed harder. Footsteps hit the porch, 3, then 4. Mara, Andrew's voice, thin, terrified, filled the hall. His key scraped metal, hunting the lock. Mara swallowed and pushed my hand away. "Let me talk first," she begged, eyes pleading. Dora stared at the door like a loaded gun. I stepped back 1 pace and chose. No cover, no script, only the truth itching. I lifted the phone for air and light. Mara shook her head, tiny, desperate, already breaking. The key turned and everything leaned forward. The key clicked once and the handle turned. Andre stepped in fast and scanned our faces. Mara straightened the robe tie with jerky fingers. Dora shifted his weight and set his jaw. I lifted the phone higher like a flare. "What happened?" His voice wavered but held. Mara reached for him with an open palm. He stayed just out of reach and watched me. Dora stared at the floor and kept breathing. I felt the room tilt toward a cliff. Mara asked for space. I tried, careful and sharp. She flinched and looked at the glowing screen. "Give me that," she whispered and stepped forward. Andre moved between us with a short shake. He wanted facts before comfort, and I saw it. Dora took 1 step toward the hall. I blocked him with my shoulder and stance. "Stay," my tone landed heavy and final. His nostrils flared as if testing roots. He glanced at the window and did the math. Andre opened his palm toward my hand. "Show me." He barely blinked and waited. Mara swallowed and touched his sleeve gently. "Please, not now," her mouth shaped without sound. I felt the old loyalty crack under pressure. I woke the phone and the thread surfaced. 1 line previewed a future none of us wanted. Dora's name wasn't there, but the timing screamed. Andre looked at Mara for a heartbeat. He nodded at me and braced for impact. Mara darted suddenly and grabbed my wrist. Her nails pressed in and drew a thin sting. "Stop," her breath hitched and then steadied. I peeled her hand off with slow control. Dora's heel scraped as he gathered courage. Andre reached, then paused, then reached again. "Do we trust Alex?" he asked without looking away. Mara answered with a tiny nod and trembling mouth. Dora stared at me like a locked gate. I tapped the screen and the messages opened. Mara's chest rose once and stalled hard. A timestamp, a hotel name spelled out brutally. A plan for later, coded but obvious. Andre took the phone with careful fingers. His ring hit the glass with a dull knock. "Is this real?" His lips barely moved. Mara's hand hovered near his shoulder and fell. Dora's throat worked and produced nothing useful. I stepped back to keep all 3 visible. No one breathed until the clock in me barked. "We can explain," Mara tried and ran out. "Not we," Andre answered and set the phone down. Dora lifted a palm like surrender without apology. He aimed at the exit with a measured shuffle. I slid sideways again and stopped his path. "You're not leaving," my voice surprised even me. He weighed his options and found none easy. Andre looked from me to him and back. "Tell me exactly what I walked into." He braced and waited for the blow. Mara wiped her face once and straightened. "It was nothing," she pushed then. "Lost steam." "Then why book a room?" Andre asked flatly. Her lips parted and closed and parted again. The bathroom fan started a weak rattle. I remembered her earlier grip and the preview. Not proof of names, but proof of intent. Andre read the same thing on my face. He stepped away from her and toward me. "How long?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Mara grabbed the vanity and steadied herself. 3 weeks came out like a cut rope. Andre blinked slow and set his shoulders. Doro cursed under his breath and looked smaller. The truth finished threading itself through the room. Outside, a car door slammed and voices rose. Family approached with laughter that didn't fit. Andre's eyes snapped to the hallway and back. "Hide this," he muttered and pointed at chaos. Mara stared at the mirror like it might answer. Doro reached for his buttons with clumsy hands. I yanked a towel from the rack and tossed it. He caught it and wrapped his shame fast. Andre picked up the phone and locked it. Footsteps neared and the knob twitched again. Mara stepped close to Andre and whispered fast. "Call it cold feet and keep them out." He stared at her and didn't nod. His jaw worked and then set like stone. I unlocked the door chain and prepared to lie. The hallway filled with cousin chatter and clinks. A knuckle tapped the wood in a cheerful rhythm. "You two ready?" someone chirped through the gap. Andre took one breath and opened halfway. I held the line behind him and waited. "Give us 10, he managed with a steady tone. The cousin chuckled and promised to stall drinks. Footsteps drifted not far, just enough cover. Andre shut the entry and locked it again. We stood in a jagged triangle and burned. He turned to Mara and searched her face. "Do you love me or the idea?" he asked. Her answer arrived late and shattered anyway. "I want you," she whispered and looked away. Andre flinched like the words left bruises. Doro cleared his throat once and squared up. "I'll face the parents if you want." Andre's head snapped and fury finally surfaced. "You'll face me first," he said and advanced. I stepped between them before fists made choices. This was the moment I dreaded for years. My friend on one side in her mess. Her partner on the other with a broken map. The uncle cornered and ready to run. The house listened as our next move loaded. Andre lunged and I caught his forearm mid-swing. Doro braced and threw a short elbow toward my ribs. I twisted, took the hit, and shoved him back. Mara grabbed a towel and pressed it to her chest. The room felt balanced on a knife's edge. Enough, Andre's breath rasped through clenched teeth. Doro lifted his chin like he owned the place. Mara stared at the floor and squeezed her hands. I planted my feet between them and waited. Someone outside laughed too loudly near the hallway. A vibration buzzed on the counter and flashed again. Not text this time, a voice memo notification pulsed. Andre glanced at it and then at me. I tapped the alert before anyone could lunge. A recording filled the cramped space like a flare. Mara's voice, breathless, asking for a room number. Another voice answered with a date that matched rehearsal night. Doro swore under his breath and grabbed for it. I pivoted and shielded the device with my back. Andre reached over me and paused the playback. "Was that you?" His eyes didn't move off her. Mara nodded once, tiny, almost invisible yet final. Doro rubbed his temple like a headache had teeth. I felt the room tilt one more degree. It was enough to start the slide. Andre took off his ring and pressed it hard into my palm. "Hold it," he didn't trust himself to carry it. Mara flinched like the metal had burned her. I pocketed it because hands started to tremble. No one wanted to be the first to speak. From the hallway came a cousin's whisper and hush. Someone lingered, listening, scenting scandal through the wood. Andre noticed and mouthed, "Keep quiet," at me. I nodded and turned the lock with slow care. Privacy bought seconds, not safety. Doro tried a softer tactic and lifted both hands. "We all regret this," he ventured, eyes darting toward escape. Andre gave a dry laugh that felt like gravel. Mara pressed the towel tighter and stared at him. I waited for the next lie to land. "Who pushed first?" Andre's voice had ice and steel. Mara swallowed and looked at me for shelter. I didn't move because shielding now meant helping harm. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. It started with me, she forced out finally. Dora's shoulders sagged, relief and fear in one motion. Andre absorbed the words like punches to the ribs. I wanted to step in and couldn't anymore. He pointed at the door and spoke very quietly. You're telling your parents before anyone else does. Footfalls approached, heavier, more certain, less friendly. A hand tried the handle and rattled the chain. Everett. Hing okay? An aunt asked through a bright smile. Andre shaped his mouth around a calm answer. The chain held, but not for long. Mara reached for Andre's wrist with trembling fingers. Give me 1 hour, she pleaded without raising volume. He pulled away slowly as if from a flame. You used many hours, he answered without blinking. Her shoulders folded, but her jaw sat stubborn. Doro edged toward the window with a quick glance. I stepped sideways and blocked the angle again. We are not running, I told him with quiet force. He stared past me like a trapped animal. The towel slipped and he grabbed it hastily. The mobile lit again with another alert chime. A new entry appeared in the thread like a knife. Same voice from before, asking if she arrived safely. Andre's mouth flattened and he tapped the speaker. A man's chuckle rolled out and shattered any doubt. Mara covered her ears and whispered I'm sorry repeatedly. The words were tiny and they didn't fix anything. Andre pressed 2 fingers to his eyes and breathed. I felt the old loyalty calcify into something colder. Doro backed up until the walls stopped his retreat. Here is the plan, Andre straightened and owned the room. You two stay here while I gather witnesses. Mara jerked her head up in shock and panic. Doro cursed quietly and reached for his shoes. I looked at Andre and understood the strategy. If family heard a clean version, chaos would be smaller. If rumors got there first, it would all explode. Mara grabbed my sleeve and shook her head fiercely. Please don't make a show, she whispered through clenched teeth. Andre stared at her and didn't soften. From outside came the heavy tread of a father's stride. The footsteps stopped right at the door like a verdict. Open up, a voice commanded with no patience left. Mara froze, Doro paled, Andre nodded at me once. I reached for the chain, knowing nothing would stay quiet. I slid the latch free and cracked the door. A broad hand pushed through and forced it wide. He filled the frame with quiet anger and breath. Mara shrank behind me, Doro stiffened against tile. Explain now, the voice snapped like a switch. Andre stepped forward before I could breathe. Not in the hall, he warned without blinking. The man took 2 steps inside and shut us in. He scanned faces, then focused on the towel. Doro looked at the floor and gripped tighter. Whose decision? The question punched across the room. Mara opened her mouth and found only air. Andre tilted his chin toward the counter. Listen, he tapped the device and hit play. A stranger's laugh spilled out like a verdict. The man's jaw locked as the message finished. He turned to Mara and waited for movement. She nodded once, tiny, and steadied her stance. I watched his shoulders drop, not softer, just heavier. This stops today, he said and pointed at Doro. Doro lifted his hands as if offering nothing. I'll leave, he muttered, inching toward the window. No exits, Andre cut in, voice flat and final. Mara grabbed my sleeve with a trembling pinch. Outside, voices clustered, hungry for answers already. The man looked at me for a beat. You started this scene, you finish it right. I swallowed and stood straighter than I felt. We keep outsiders back, we document everything now. He considered it, then gave one sharp nod. Andre unlocked the bathroom cabinet and pulled tissue. He wrapped the device and handed it to me. No more deletions, he said, eyes on Mara. Her lips parted, then pressed into a line. Doro inched again and I blocked without touching. A cousin knocked twice and tried the handle. Photos incoming, she chirped through the wood, cheerful. The man strode over and held the knob firm. Give us privacy, he called, tone firm and calm. Footsteps retreated, but not far enough to help. Mara's breathing steadied, then spiked when he turned. You're speaking to your mother now, he ordered. Her throat worked, but she didn't argue this time. Andre nodded toward the bedroom across the hall. We do it where doors actually close, he added. We moved as a unit, awkward and careful. I kept Doro between me and the wall. Andre carried the ring box like a warning. The man walked last and guarded our backs. Every step drained hope while building resolve. Inside the bedroom, I shoved a dresser against entry. Andre set the ring box on the nightstand. He placed the phone beside it, screen dark. Call her, he told Mara, then looked away. Doro hovered near curtains, sweating through silence. Mara dialed and put it on speaker. Her mother answered bright, then went quiet fast. We need you here now, Mara forced out, shaking. Bring no one, the man added in a low growl. The line clicked off with a promise in dread. Andre turned to Doro with a short breath. You will sit there and keep your voice low. Doro lowered himself onto the ottoman, rigid. He rubbed his forearms. Like they itched. I stood beside the door and counted heartbeats. The man faced Andre and held out a hand. Give me the ring, he demanded without ceremony. Andre stared at it for one long second. He placed it in that open palm slowly. I knew what that transfer meant for tomorrow. Mara watched the exchange and lost more color. Please don't announce anything tonight, she whispered. Andre met her eyes and didn't blink. We announce truth, not theater, he answered, unwavering. She looked away and gripped the bed frame hard. Footfalls hurried outside and halted near us. A softer knock followed, cautious and uneven. Mara, it's me, her mother called through the wood. The man moved the dresser enough for a gap. He opened to let her slip through quickly. She took one look and covered her mouth. Her gaze landed on Doro and sharpened to steel. What have you done? She asked, voice trembling. No response came, only air and fear. Andre tapped the phone and cued the recording. The message played again, colder than before. Mara's mother listened without a flinch this time. When it ended, she stood straighter than anyone expected. Cancel everything, she said, and faced her brother. You apologize now, then you leave this house. Doro's lips moved, excuses circling without landing. He glanced at me like I might rescue him. I stared back and let the silence press. Andre stepped closer until toes nearly touched. Doro folded and whispered a broken apology. Mara didn't accept or reject, just breathed. Her mother took her hand and squeezed once. We handle guests in one statement, she decided. The man nodded and returned the ring box. Andre didn't take it, which said enough. A cousin shouted from the hall about dinner. Laughter followed, then faded when no one answered. We had minutes before the house stormed in. I checked the latch and reset the furniture. Mara exhaled, then braced for the next blow. Her mother turned to me with a steady look. You stand with us when we speak. I nodded, aware that loyalty had shifted. Andre picked up the device and locked it again. Doro stared at the carpet like an open grave. The man opened the door and scanned the hall. Now, he said, and moved with grim purpose. Mara wiped her face once, then followed. Andre walked beside me, not touching, not wavering. We stepped into the corridor and the noise swelled. We hit the corridor and faces turned like magnets. Murmurs rolled forward, then stalled when they saw us. Mara's mother lifted her hand for quiet. Andre stood beside me, jaw locked. I braced for the first question to bite. Everyone to the lounge now, the uncle's voice carried hard. Cousins drifted after him, curious and uneasy. Chairs scraped as the crowd made space. Mara kept pace 2 steps behind her mother. Doro followed last, eyes on the exit. Andre climbed onto the hearth and faced them. Plans change, he started, measured and clear. A wave of whispers swelled and threatened control. Mara's mother moved forward and anchored the room. I raised my phone like a clock about to chime. Not rumors, evidence, Andre nodded at my hand. I tapped the memo and let it run. The laugh hit first, then her own request. Gasps cut through the hush like broken glass. Mara stared at the floor and didn't move. Uncle Doro tried to slide sideways toward the door. I shifted without looking and filled his path. An aunt pointed a trembling finger at him. Is that your voice? She asked, almost a hiss. He folded and shrank, answer plain in his face. Andre spoke before the room erupted. The ceremony is off, we will inform vendors. No theatrics, no bargaining, no soft landing. Mara's mother placed a hand on his shoulder. He didn't lean, but he didn't pull away. A cousin raised a phone like a periscope. Put that down, the uncle barked without blinking. The device lowered and guilt flushed across cheeks. No one wanted to be first to post. They wanted someone else to do it. Mara lifted her head and found her voice. I'll leave tonight, she said, steady but thin. Her mother flinched, then nodded once. Andre closed his eyes and inhaled slowly. I waited for the backlash that always comes. It came from the far corner, low and mean. Boys will be boys, make them apologize. Half the room stiffened, half recoiled. Andre stepped forward, hands open and empty. We won't normalize this, he answered unwavering. Doru stood and tried for contrition that missed. I regret everything, he murmured, eyes flicking down. The uncle cut him off with a raised palm. You regret being caught, came the response clean. Doru sat back hard and stared at the rug. Mara turned to Andre and swallowed pain. I'll return the deposits, all of them. He shook his head once with finality. You return expectations, he said, raw but controlled. That line hung there like a struck bell. A knock hit the entry and a deputy stepped in. Someone had called, probably a neighbor with gossip. He asked if anyone needed immediate help. Andre looked at me and gave a slight tilt. I stepped forward because my pulse wouldn't let me hide. No injuries, we just need statements. The deputy scanned faces and took out forms. Mara's mother moved to him and spoke quietly. He nodded and kept his pen moving. Doru's knee bounced until the uncle stilled it. Guests trickled toward the door with awkward hugs. Some offered pity that wasn't wanted. Some glared at Doru like he had stolen air. Andre stayed on the hearth and absorbed impact. I stood close in case another gust hit. The deputy reached me and lifted his chin. You found them, it was not a question. I gave the sequence without drama or spin. He wrote, then asked for the device. I handed it over and felt the weight leave. Mara approached Andre with shaking hands. Do you want me to go now? He looked at her for 3 quiet seconds. Take your things and stay with your mother. She nodded like the instruction kept her upright. The uncle faced Doru and spoke in a low rumble. You're gone after you sign that paper. Doru stiffened but didn't resist anymore. The deputy passed the form across the table. Ink met paper and the room exhaled in pieces. Andre climbed down and found me at once. Ring still with you, he didn't need the answer. I pressed it in to his palm and stepped back. He pocketed it like a final door closing. My chest loosened, then tightened for what came next. Mara's mother gathered her daughter by the elbow. We packed quickly and leave through the side. Mara nodded and didn't cry in front of them. I walked with them to the hallway threshold. Andre stayed behind to thank the deputy. At the doorway, Mara paused and faced me. Don't hate me, she whispered, voice threadbare. I wanted to and I didn't, and it hurt. You fix you, then maybe you fix friends. She blinked hard, then turned and kept moving. When I looked back, Doru was already gone. The uncle must have walked him out quietly. Andre stood alone with folded arms in resolve. The lounge sat wrecked by words, not furniture. We weren't done, and the hardest part still waited. I grabbed the suitcase and pushed the side door open. Mara slid past me with her mother holding tight. A cousin blocked the path and raised a phone. Andre stepped in front of her and shook his head. The cousin lowered it, but her thumb hovered anyway. The deputy waited by the cars with a clipboard. Anyone want a protective order tonight? His gaze scanned us. Mara's mother nodded, short and decisive, no hesitation. Andre shook his head once, jaw locked. I felt both choices pulling in opposite directions. Doru stood near the gate with hands stuffed deep. He watched like a spectator who knew the score. The deputy noticed and walked straight toward him. Stay off this property, he warned in a flat tone. Doru smirked, then wilted when neighbors turned to look. My pocket buzzed and a number flashed unknown. Coordinator, Andre muttered, eyes still on Doru. I took the call and stepped toward the hedge. We are canceling, I said, voice firm and even. Send invoices to me, I added and ended it. Mara tugged my sleeve and whispered, barely there. I need the device and the thread erased. Her mother pinched her arm and glared hard. Evidence first, she said, steady as a metronome. I held my hand out and waited in silence. Mara hesitated, then placed the phone in my palm. I opened the storage and tapped export with care. A progress bar crawled like it wanted to quit. Andre watched the screen until the archive confirmed. He nodded once, then looked away quickly. A bridesmaid rushed over with eyes wild and red. Tell me it's gossip, she pleaded, chest heaving fast. I met her stare and shook my head. She pointed toward Doru and spit the word monster. Someone gasped and a new circle formed around him. The uncle, still iron, still unflinching, joined the deputy. He spoke to Doru low enough to carry weight. Leave now, he ordered, not asking for compliance. Doro backed toward the curb and stumbled once. He climbed into a rideshare and didn't look back. Mara's bag thumped into the trunk with a finality. Her mother opened the passenger door and waited. Mara leaned toward Andre without quite stepping closer. I'm sorry, she said, voice cracked and brave. He stared at the gravel and didn't answer. Another call came, the venue this time. The manager wanted a statement for their staff. Andre took the phone and kept it simple. Event cancelled due to personal reasons, he said, drained. Redirect deliveries, he added, and ended it before questions. The group chat exploded on my screen like fireworks. Messages stacked, then jumped into accusations and theories. I typed one line, then paused and erased it. I sent a shorter version, just the confirmed facts. Then I muted the thread and felt better instantly. The deputy returned and held out 2 forms. Consent to trespass notice, he explained with clipped patience. Mara's mother signed without a single look up. Andre pushed the second form back toward me. You sign as witness, he said, steady and tired. Mara reached for the pen and froze mid-motion. Her eyes flicked up to mine, asking for air. I kept my hand still and gave her space. She signed in 3 slow strokes that almost trembled. The deputy capped the pen and finally relaxed. We split from the crowd and headed for the lane. The bridesmaid followed, then stopped at Andre's stare. Give us an hour, he said, voice sanded down. She nodded and hugged herself against the gossip. I opened the driver door and slid behind the wheel. Mara's mother climbed in and clicked her belt fast. Mara settled in the back and hugged her knees. Straight to my place, the mother instructed, no debate. I pulled out while Andre stood motionless by the hedge. He lifted a hand once and let it fall. Halfway down the road, Mara whispered into the dark. Can I fix any of this? She asked without hope. Her mother kept her eyes forward and spoke quietly. You can fix you and then we see. I watched the rear view and saw Andre getting smaller. Another buzz, a message from an unknown contact. Meet me alone tomorrow. The number wasn't saved. I showed it to Mara and waited for a reaction. She shook her head hard and pressed her lips tight. I forwarded it to the deputy and blocked the sender. We reached the apartment complex and parked crookedly. A pair of bridesmaids waited under the stairwell like guards. They hurried over and embraced Mara with careful arms. Do you want us inside? One asked with shaky courage. Mara nodded once, then hesitated at the threshold. Inside, no speeches, only movement and small decisions. We filled 2 trash bags with keepsakes and receipts. Mara dug out a card and ripped it in half. I took the laptop and uploaded the archive to cloud. Her mother placed a notebook on the counter and breathed. A knock came sharp, then again, then a pause. Andre stood there with a canvas tote and a stare. I stepped aside and led him into the hallway. He held out the ring resting in a receipt sleeve. Do with it what you want, he said, voice calm. Mara didn't take it, her hands stayed down. Her mother reached and slid it into a drawer. Return when ready, she murmured with a firm nod. Andre looked at me in the room and nodded back. Last thing, he added, watching Mara carefully. He produced a plain envelope with printed pages inside. Vendors list and contact numbers with amounts. He placed it on the table and stepped away. I'll settle my portion tomorrow, he added, still composed. Mara leaned on the counter and didn't argue. His phone rang loud and he turned his head. Coordinator again, probably checking damage and schedules. I'll handle press if it leaks, he said, efficient. Mara winced and whispered, please don't make a statement. He glanced at me, then put the device away. I'm not out to punish, he said, slower now. I'm out to stop bleeding, he added with intent. Mara blinked and nodded because that part was true. He looked at her mother and then at the bags. We're done for tonight, he finished, final as a door. He left without hugging anyone and closed the door gently. The apartment sagged in the silence he left behind. One bridesmaid started crying into her hands. The other stood at the sink and clenched her jaw. I stacked the forms and took a deep breath. Mara lifted her chin like making herself choose. I need help tomorrow finding a counselor, she said. Her mother nodded and pulled out her phone. She tapped 3 numbers from memory and waited. A voice answered and gave a morning slot. Mara turned to me and held my gaze too long. Will you come? She asked, already knowing the answer. I wanted to say yes to every broken thing. I'll get you there, I said, slow and honest. I won't sit inside, I added, because boundary mattered. The bridesmaids packed a small tote with basics. They worked like medics, quick and focused. I took the filled bags to the door. Mara followed and stopped me with a hand on my arm. Thank you for not lying earlier, she whispered. Outside, the hallway felt like a different arena. Laughter floated in from the street and faded. I walked the trash to the curb in silence. A car rolled by slowly and then sped up. The driver stared like they recognized a headline forming. Back upstairs, the living room turned into a triage. Mara's mother wrote names and tasks on a single sheet. Bridesmaids volunteered pickups and returns for morning errands. I sent the deputy the final file link. He texted back receipt and a single thumbs up. Mara reached for a glass and then didn't drink. Her hands shook and then went still. I'll sleep at Mom's, she said almost to herself. The bridesmaids exchanged a look and nodded in sync. I grabbed the keys again and pointed at the door. We loaded the trunk with everything she could carry. Mara slid into the backseat and exhaled hard. Her mother settled up front with a map in mind. The bridesmaids followed in their car for support. We pulled away while a neighbor curiously lifted blinds. Halfway there, Andre texted me one line. I'm staying with a friend tonight, that was it. I typed a reply and erased it twice. I sent back a simple received and kept driving. The read receipt popped and then went dark. At her mother's place, I carried boxes inside. Mara walked behind me like each step might betray her. She stopped in the hallway and pressed her forehead to the wall. I don't want to call him again, she said. Her mother hugged her once and then let go. We laid a blanket on the couch and stood back. Mara sank down and pulled it up to her chin. Her eyes followed me as I turned toward the door. Tomorrow at 9, her mother reminded me gently. I'll be here at 8:45, I answered, already moving. In the driveway, my phone rattled with fresh messages. A cousin asked if the ceremony could be salvaged. Another warned that gossip already hit a group thread. I typed a final broadcast to the family chat. Wedding cancelled, respect privacy, details are handled. I started the engine and let it idle at M. Oh, meant. The passenger seat still smelled like adrenaline and fear. I rested my head on the wheel and counted to 10. A siren wailed far off and then vanished. I pulled out and drove toward a night with too much space. Back in my place, I opened the laptop again. I moved the archive to a separate folder labeled Hold. I sent Andre the access code with a short note. Use if anyone challenges the account. He replied with a dot, then another, then nothing more. Sleep didn't land right away, and I didn't force it. I lay there replaying choices and near misses. Doors opening, voices breaking, paper signing like a drum. Tomorrow would bring refunds and hard meetings. Tonight ended with quiet that felt like a bruise.